The sound of the shofar is the sound of God's victory, God reigning. Now let's take the pieces of the puzzle and let's put them together with a message for the end-time believer. Number one, the day of the shofar comes at the end of the Hebrew year. It announces the closing of the sacred cycle of the holy days, the closing up. So what is it telling you? The shofar is linked to the end, especially. It's linked to the end things. In Greek, the word for end is eshka. And you put it together, you get the word eschatology, if you ever heard about that. Eschatology is the study of the last days or the end things. So the shofar is linked especially to the last days, to the end-time believer. That's you. And the mystery of the age is that God has set up the entire age as a Hebrew year, meaning the Hebrew year begins in the spring with the holy days, Passover and Pentecost. And so the gospel begins in the spring with Passover, Messiah on the cross, and Pentecost, the Spirit. And then comes the summer harvest, where we are now in the summer harvest about go forth and preach the gospel. But the Hebrew year closes in the autumn. September, October is when it all comes home. And the Feast of Trumpets ushers that all in. So the trumpets are linked to the mystery of the end of the age. The end times, what is yet to come. The Feast of Trumpets holds the mystery of the end. The shofar was about the holy things, about the awesome things. It ushers in the days of awe. And what that's saying, what's that revelation? The end times, there's things to be scared about, that people can be scared about. There's heavy things, there's evil, but it's also prophetically the awesome days. Because God's purposes are being fulfilled. The end times are awesome times because prophecy is fulfilled. You can look at all the evil, but at the same time, look, Israel's back in the world. That's thousands of years of prophecy fulfilled in our day. And they're awesome times. It's awesome to live in the end times. The shofar was a holy instrument, and that says also the end times will be a time not only of evil and sin and apostasy, but of holiness. Holiness, meaning God's people, means you as an end-time believer have to especially walk in the power of holiness. The shofar is the sound that calls Israel, his people, to gather together. Now, look at that. I mean, here you've got that. So what happens in the end times? This always called Israel to gather together. So what's the end times? It's the time of the shofar, meaning Israel, the children of Israel, are going to gather again together to Zion. The end times can only happen once Israel is gathered together in Zion. It has happened. It's happening. We're in the end times. Even when we talk about whatever, or we look at what's going to happen in the Middle East with Syria, it's always the backdrop that what's going to happen with Israel. The shofar is the sound that tells you that the summer harvest is ending. So whatever, you got to finish it up, reap your fields, do what you have. So what it's saying is, in the end times, it's saying, God is saying, finish up. Whatever has not been reaped for the gospel, reap. Wherever you have to go, spread the gospel. Whatever you have to do, don't wait. It has to be preached to all nations. Go forth, spread the gospel. Because the holy days only come as the harvest is coming to its close. We have to preach the gospel to all nations. End time believer. Whatever you would do, do it now. Don't say wait, because this is the time, crucial time. Another puzzle piece here. It says that the shofar is the sound of war and danger. What does that mean for the end times? What's the revelation? The end times will be times of danger. The word says there will be perilous times. It says there'll be wars and rumors of wars. If you're not on the right side of the shofar, if you're not in the will of God, it's a time of fear. But if you are in the will of God, you don't have to fear anything. Let's take another puzzle piece. The sound of the shofar was the sound of the watchmen on the walls. What does that mean? You as God's people in the end times, you are to be a watchman. It means especially, what's it about a watchman? The watchman, he ministered, or she, in your case, in some of your cases, ministered at night. When it was night, that was his time of rising. Well, the end times are times of spiritual night. But you have to be vigilant. You cannot sleep. As people are falling asleep spiritually, you have to stay awake. You have to be vigilant. You cannot fall asleep to sin like the others are doing. You have to stand for God. The mantle of the watchman is on you. The charge is for you. You have a charge to sound warning and sound the gospel boldly to those who are lost. You have a calling to wake up the sleeping, sounding the alarm to the perishing. If you don't, the blood's on your head. The watchman has to stay not only awake and vigilant, the watchman has to stay separate from the city so he can warn the city. If you're in the city, you can't warn the city. You have to be above the city. You cannot be caught up in all the junk of this culture and then be a light to this culture. You have to be separate from the culture. That doesn't mean separate from people, but you have to be separate from the sin of this age. And separate from the junk of this age and be in the presence of God so you can be a warning, you can be a blessing. And the watchman stays vigilant on the watchtower. And waits, it says, it waits for the dawn to come. That's the end time believer. What was the shofar? The shofar marked the beginning and end of times. It sounded the beginning of months and the end of months. Well, listen to this. Last days, scripture, Revelation. And when he broke the seventh seal, I saw the seven angels who stand before God, and seven trumpets were given them. And the seven angels who have the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. There shall be delay no longer, but in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, which is about to sound, then the mystery of God is finished, as he preached to his servants, the prophets. The mystery of God. What is this? The last day's shofar, when that seventh angel sounds, it will sound. He will mark the end. It's always been the marker of the end and the beginning of what's coming. The mystery of God will be finished with the sound of the shofar, the sound of the trumpet. The shofar tells us that the last days will be the times of the end and the beginning. It'll be the changing of time. It's the end and it's something new. And at the same time, it says the kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of the Lord. When the shofar or the trumpets are sounding. Now let's take the other puzzle.